Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today Aaron Rodgers will not be returning to the New York Jets next season. This is something that we have kind of suspected for a while now, that there was going to be a split between the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. But what is so interesting about this report is that the Jets' new head coach, Aaron Glenn, and their new GM, his name is slipping my mind at the moment, they met with Aaron Rodgers last week in New Jersey, and they basically told Aaron, hey, if you're going to come back to the Jets next season, you have to be at every mandatory offseason workout. And then you also have to give up the Pat McAfee show. You cannot do that show anymore, which I would say is a pretty bold request of the Jets to make. Diana Rossini broke this news on her podcast, Scoop City. We're going to go ahead and we're going to play the clip from that podcast where she kind of breaks down what happened between the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, and then we'll react to it on the other side. So here we go. This is what Diana Rossini had to say about the split with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets on her podcast.
Maneuver their way into the big Sunday morning splash with Jay Glazer reporting that Aaron Rodgers was informed by the New York Jets that the Jets are going to be moving on. And obviously we are not surprised by that. We've been talking about this on the show for months. And we've also been discussing how, most of the candidates that were interviewing for that Jets job had suggested to the organization, hey, if I get this job, I'm going to do this without Aaron Rodgers. And obviously that appears to be Aaron Glenn's thought process on this as well. And I was told that when they had conversations with Aaron Rodgers about what the future would look like, if you're going to be part of this team, you're going to attend all the training camp. You're not going to do Pat McAfee interviews anymore. So they were really trying to change the way.
They said that?
Yeah, they had a conversation with him of, if you were to stay here, here's how we would want it to be. So this to me is Aaron Glenn getting control back, and Glenn making sure
Who said that to him?
The GM and the head coach, when they had these conversations of, look, I think it's Aaron Glenn that's the one pushing for, I'm holding everyone accountable, and every single person on this team is going to be treated the same way.
So do you think that if he would have agreed to not do that stuff, that he would have been their quarterback? Or do you think he was just thinking like, I don't want to be controlled. I don't want to be put in a box. This is fast. I knew none of this. And this is extremely fascinating to me hearing you say that.
I think that no matter what the Jets were going to say, Aaron Rodgers wanted to move on. I mean, this is something that I knew about.
So Rodgers himself. So he went up there to hear him out, but you're thinking that probably
Look, I think it's just like anything else. You want to listen, right? Like, I think he was smart to talk to the Jets and say, all right, where do we stand? How does this work? And maybe if they were on the side of maybe convincing him more, this could have changed. But this wasn't the way it was when they traded for him, where, it was exciting.
He was the GM pretty much.
He was the GM. Yeah, he's the GM no more. So that just brings us to who will.
Yeah, so there you have it. She kind of broke down that whole situation there. It seemed like, according to her, both sides are kind of like, hey, we want out of this. But they did meet, they did talk, they did discuss what it would be like if Aaron were to stay with the Jets. What this tells me, though, what this report says, where they said, I mean, the offseason training camp stuff, that makes sense. I think Aaron would be more open to that. But what I heard, that the fact that they said no more Pat McAfee, what that tells me is going into that meeting, the Jets were like, yeah, there's like a 0.0001% chance Aaron Rodgers is coming back. You don't he's going to say no to that. Aaron Rodgers gets paid like over $1 million, I think, or whatever, to appear on the Pat McAfee show. So that would be, I think, the equivalent of basically the Jets saying, hey, you can come back here, but you're going to have to give up this State Farm sponsorship or whatever. Basically saying, hey, you come back, you're going to have to give up a lot of money in order to come back. And kind of like Aaron Rodgers and Chase Daniel alluded to in that clip, he's like, hey, he doesn't want to be controlled. He doesn't want to be micromanaged. He's like, I'm a 41-year-old guy. I was on the Pat McAfee show when I was winning MVPs and was the best quarterback in the league and getting the Packers the 1 seed. What are you talking about saying I can't go on this show? So to me, instead of the narrative like, oh my God, the Jets are setting an example for their new culture and they are not going to have any nonsense going on in the New York Jets right now. I don't think that's what this is. I think going into that meeting, the Jets knew, hey, Aaron ain't coming back. So we're just basically, it's kind of like the equivalent if I've never been in a relationship like this, but I feel like I've seen some of these on TV or reality shows where basically a couple is together and one person in the couple is basically giving them like an insane ultimatum that like, hey, we can still be together, but you have to do this. You have to do X, Y, and Z, knowing that that person that they're giving that ultimatum to is ultimately going to be like, no, I'm not going to stop hanging out with my friend Ashley. What kind of crazy ass request is that? No, this is over. And that's kind of how I view basically this reporting on the Aaron Rodgers Jets situation, because there's a 0% chance that he would give up McAfee. I think he likes doing it, and he obviously gets compensated for it. So that brings up the question with the Jets, not with the Jets, well, obviously brings up the question, what are the Jets going to do at a quarterback position? But it also brings up a more pressing question of does Aaron Rodgers go? And is there actually a landing spot for Aaron Rodgers in the NFL? Because I think this is kind of a weird year where there's not a lot of like really good quarterback destinations for veteran guys. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to share on your screen now. We're just going to go through all 32 teams and we're going to kind of go through which teams actually need a quarterback heading into next season. So if you go through, let's just go through every single team here. Buffalo, no. Miami, no. The Jets need one, but they're not getting Aaron Rodgers. Patriots, no. Baltimore, no. Pittsburgh, you could say maybe for Aaron Rodgers, but like, don't you feel like if you're Pittsburgh, all the reporting is that they're going to bring back Russell Wilson. But don't you think, too, like, I think another thing that's important to point out here, too, going through all 32 of these teams, who on any of these teams' lists, if they're in their war rooms this offseason and they're picking out names of quarterbacks that they want, who has Aaron Rodgers as their number one option? I don't think there's a single team here. And if you're Pittsburgh, it's reported that Matthew Stafford could potentially be available. I was going to do a video on that later this week. But if you're Pittsburgh, would you rather have Aaron Rodgers or Matt Stafford? I think at this stage in time, I'd rather have Matt Stafford. Less baggage, younger, has had a better year than Aaron this year. Cincinnati, no. Cleveland, this is the type of level of teams that need quarterbacks. Houston, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, Indianapolis is probably my number one destination because like they almost made the playoffs a year ago. They obviously struggled this year going 8-9, but a huge reason they struggled is they just had inconsistent quarterback play. Anthony Richardson was awful. Joe Flacco was more trick or treat when he played for them. Jaguars, no. Tennessee, that's another team that needs a quarterback. But again, why would they want a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers? Why would they want a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers when they're in a clear rebuild? Kansas City, no. Chargers, no. Denver, no. The Raiders, I mean, maybe, but I think they would probably rather just roll the dice with a young quarterback in the draft. They had the 6th pick. Philly, no. Washington, no. Dallas, no. Giants, again, this is the level of team that are looking for a quarterback right now. The Giants, and again, they're the team that's most linked to Stafford if Stafford were going to leave LA. Detroit, no. Minnesota, no. Green Bay, no. Chicago, no. On Minnesota, basically, and I think that's kind of like my conclusion, if Aaron Rodgers is going to play NFL football next year, it's going to be a situation where, let's say, Sam Darnold gets signed by, for sake of argument, the Jets in the offseason. And they basically say, we're rolling with J.J. McCarthy in 2025. And then week 4 happens. They're 3-1. J.J. McCarthy tears his ACL. The Vikings might sit around and be like, hey, we still think we're Super Bowl contenders. We'll go out and we'll sign Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see if we can make another Super Bowl run. I mean, they were a game away from the 1 seed this year. And I think that's kind of the only options that we really have for Aaron Rodgers if his career is going to continue. Chicago, no. Green Bay, no. Tampa Bay, no. Atlanta, no. Carolina, no. New Orleans, I mean, they're kind of in cap hell. They have that Derek Carr contract. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. But again, that's a rebuilding team. Why would a rebuilding team want a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers? The Rams, that's probably the most interesting team name, because if indeed Stafford does move on, the Rams are a team that, like, if they have a good quarterback, they can compete for a Super Bowl. they can compete for a Super Bowl. So if Stafford is really going to the Giants or wherever else, that could be a realistic option for Aaron Rodgers. Seahawks, no, they're rolling with Geno. Arizona, no, they got Kyler Murray. San Francisco, no, they have Brock Purdy. So you just look at all of these teams. The teams that definitely need a quarterback are like the Browns, Giants, Titans, Raiders. Like, it's a lot of bottom barrel teams that are in rebuilding states that are not really necessarily looking for a 1-year stopgap or a 1 or 2 year stopgap quarterback. Like, and if you're Aaron too, you'd probably want to go somewhere where you can compete for a Super Bowl. The thing that's kind of scary for the future of Aaron Rodgers in the NFL is it doesn't seem like there is that clear option right now. It doesn't seem like there is a team out there that is in their offseason meetings saying, hey, we want Aaron Rodgers. We are targeting Aaron Rodgers to be our starting quarterback. And if that's the case, I feel like he's going to get cut by the Jets. And maybe week 1, I would say it's more than a 50% chance week 1 next season he's not on a team. I really think so. I don't see it. I don't see the team. Maybe you guys can leave a comment in the chat. Tell me what team you think would sign Aaron Rodgers or trade for Aaron Rodgers. I don't see it right now. I don't see it. Seems like every other team has like a plan A before they get to plan B or C, which is Aaron Rodgers. And that's kind of like the interesting thing here. This dude's career might be over. We might have seen the last of Aaron Rodgers. And that also kind of like begs like an even bigger question, going back to like the reporting from the beginning, is I know that like McAfee has on other, former players. I know JJ Watt goes on there a lot. Belichick obviously went on there a lot too. But I kind of wonder, just from like the little bit of the sports media perspective, I wonder how valuable it is as a show to have on Aaron Rodgers if he's not in the NFL. Because kind of the reason that you paid him so much money is that, like, once a month or so, Aaron Rodgers, whether he did it on purpose or not, or whether things were taken out of context or not, would make news, saying something that, is semi-controversial for some people. And that is a huge thing that would get played around. People would tune into these McAfee Rodgers interviews. But if this dude's not on an NFL roster and he's just hanging out with RFK Jr. or whatever the heck he would be doing in retirement, tripping on drugs every single weekend or whatever, even though I think that's just an off-season thing for him, but I could be wrong. I don't know what value he brings to the show. Maybe he still does. Maybe the McAfee, machine is just too big where it doesn't matter whether or not Aaron is in the NFL or not, and he's still valuable to the show either way. But that's just another little thing that I thought about with this, Aaron Rodgers leaving the Jets and potentially being done as an NFL quarterback. Kind of thought that was interesting. Again, could be wrong. That's just an idea. I don't know I don't know which way it would go. So either way, Aaron Rodgers done with the Jets, unsure of his future in the NFL, if there is a future in the NFL. Again, I think most likely it would be a team that like starts out really hot. Their quarterback has a season-ending injury like week 4, week 5, week 6, and then Aaron Rodgers comes in and maybe they can spark a Super Bowl run or something like that. It's the only thing I can see for him playing next year. So that's going to do it for this episode here today. If you like this episode, make sure you hit that like button and hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. That is the best way that you can help support the show, and it costs you absolutely $0. It'll also give you notifications whenever we have new videos drop on this channel. Feel free to check out other videos on the Sports Detective Podcast channel page. And again, leave your comments on what you think is the next step for Aaron Rodgers now that he's leaving the Jets. Would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this video. So thank you for watching. We'll talk to you next time.